Okay, everyone, how's it going? So I decided to do this video because I see every now and then people do videos on this, and I've even got these comments. What's the best steel I should get for a sword? And really, it can be a complicated question to answer sometimes. I mean, I can recommend the blades that I have, you know, obviously. Like, should you get 1095 or T10, which is almost the same as a 1095, not quite, or should I get an L6? Well, yes, say hello to Tomo. Let's kind of, for me to answer this question, let's go back in history and let's take a look at that first. Okay? Because it actually plays a role in when people ask these questions. Like, let's look at during the time period. We're going to look at mainly like Europe. Okay? And the type of steel they use, because we all know, if you look into Japanese, they used iron sand. Well, in Europe they kind of did the same thing for there in the medieval times, and it was called bog iron. So let me kind of pull up my notes here. All right, yeah, because I don't fully do a script. Screw that. But it was Blue Mary steel, basically, crude Blue Mary steel, which is bog iron, or iron sand. It's basically what it is, and it's formed in basically like springs and bogs, and it attaches itself to aquatic plants. So it's kind of easy to harvest, kind of like the iron tagamahani in Japan. It's on the surface. And then we get into curable steel. A lot of us know what that is. You know, it's a higher quality steel made by melting iron with charcoal. Meteorite iron. Now that is kind of wish-washy, because how many people find meteorites laying around? I mean, I have mixed feelings on that whole thing. Pattern welding, just like Tomo, Damascus steel is not pattern welding. It's wood steel, just hammered and folded. That's it. Pattern welding is when you take multiple different types of iron and you put it together. That's pattern welding. All the knives and swords that we see now are not Damascus. They're pattern welded. Sorry, that's what it is. Damascus no longer exists. But Damascus steel was some of the best out there during that time period. Okay? And then we got, and I'm just highlighting the majorities of them. Then we got spring steel. And yes, there were some forms of spring steel that they had found. There wasn't a lot of them. Now, with bog iron from what I found is has a lot of impurities, kind of like tagamahani in Japan. So you have to work it a lot, unlike all the other methods. And it was mainly found and used in Scandinavia. Their iron is very, very poor there, so that's what they had to work with at the time. So in order to make it way better, they either added animal bone or human bone. Yes, you heard correct. Human bone. Mainly they used animal bone. Okay. So that added the carbon into it. So you need to add carbon to make it stronger. Okay. Now that we're done with the kind of the rough history of what type of steel they had back then. And as the medieval ages developed, this is how well the smithing of the swords were. Okay, they went up in quality. So now let's look at who had the best, who didn't. So obviously, if you're a nobility, you had the money to basically, well, have a really good quality sword made for yourself. Okay, you can have all the lavishings on it, engravings on it, everything. Okay. Now you have knights. It's kind of wishy-washy in the medieval period with knights. It started off, you were born in a nobility home. Then, you know, you worked as a squire and everything to become a knight, right? Being trained. Then it got kind of to the point that you could almost buy yourself into knighthood. Like if you could afford a war horse and you could afford a good quality sword and basically be a man of arms and work for a lord, you could become a knight. That's why it's kind of wish-washy when it comes to knights, because it kind of started changing towards the end of the medieval period. So yes and no on knighthood. Okay, on knights. Started off, of course, with nobility and then changed, if you could. Now we're going to get to the peasants. So low-ranking soldiers a lot of times were peasants. Some were already established in the king's army, and they were the lowest tier of them all. So basically they were the people in the front line with a polearm. Okay. Their swords, well, let's put it just straightforward. They sucked. They just basically sucked. They were made out of the lowest quality steel possible, because your life wasn't worth their life. So if you died, they didn't really care. You know, you hear that term nowadays, you know, at work, I could replace you in an hour. Yeah, because your life wasn't worth shit. And I'm sorry to say, that's just the way it is. And that's the way it was back then. So if you died, your sword broke, let's say you got in close quarter combat, you're one of these little low-ranking peons, and your sword broke, they didn't care during that time period. They give two craps if you died. Okay, as long as that knight and the noble person lived, they didn't care if you did. So, and it was because that's what they could afford. Okay. Because they weren't going to supply them with, you know, weapons. And if they did, because you were not of nobility, they're definitely not going to supply you with the best quality. That's why they would hand you a polearm or a spear, because it was really cheap to make. I mean, you think about it, a spear, what is it? It's basically a long piece of wood with a metal tip at the end. That's basically it in a nutshell. That's sharp. Or sometimes it's just got a point and it's not sharp. You just need to stab somebody with it. So they weren't going to give you the best quality. Okay? Because you really look at the historical deals, the people like the noblemen were behind sometimes, or in the middle of like their troops. Very rarely were they in the forefront, you know. And if they were, they had like really armored up, high quality weapons surrounding them. All right. So that's basically, you know, throughout the centuries, it's always been like that until it developed more and more and more. During the Napoleonic army, when Napoleon was trying to take over and conquer everything, Britain did step up for their army, to the point that every troop was issued with their chest plate, because they weren't wearing full armor anymore, but they did wear a chest plate. And it was law that every single chest plate was tested, because muskets were involved now, that they were bulletproof. They had to be shot one time. Okay? If the bullet just dented it, it was worth the troops wearing. So I will give them kudos for that. Like I said, over the years things developed and, you know, everything else. But during the medieval times, no. If you were low ranking, your equipment was crap. You didn't even have armor. Okay? You had chainmail, that was about it. That's all you got. Not even a helmet, you know. But even during the Napoleon War, low-ranking people still didn't have some of the best quality. Like the Napoleon War, they weren't engineers. They were like kind of engineers. They would put up the tents. They would take the tents down, the camps or whatever. They were issued a sword. Now, the sword that they were issued, they were never trained to use. Believe it or not, because they would use pole arms, spikes, or spears. That's what they used. That was their tactic. So they really didn't need to know how to use a sword, right? Because if you got through that defense, everybody's in trouble. So even during those times, even Napoleon would like gear up his troops. It didn't mean like every single person had the best quality or the best training. Okay, if you were down here, you probably didn't have the most training and didn't have the best quality. If you're right here, a little bit better training, a little bit better quality equipment. And if you're up here, you had the best of the best. Okay? It's still like that today. You know? Sometimes we don't like to see it that way, but it actually is. It's still like that today. Around the world. So, what type of steel should you get for your sword? Where does this all play into it, if you haven't caught on to it yet? It comes into what you can afford. That's basically it. Especially in times like this right now, where things have gotten more expensive, harder to get, and whatnot. It's whatever you can afford. Now people go, oh well, you can save up. Well, yes, you can. You can save up. Very much so. But, there again, are the prices of it going to go up again? Let's say you're a beginner. You can't afford an L6 blade. Or the new thing that I see people saying, these S7s. I do not own an S7. Can't even afford one of those things. They're way out of my price range. Hanwei. You know, they got some really good sword. Kind of expensive. So this is what I tell people. Yes, you can get T10s, actually fairly reasonable prices, you know, which are very good steel to use. 1095, you can get at a reasonable price. Okay, L6, you're starting to get up there. So it's like, to me, yes, I'll give my recommendations to swords, you know, that are good quality. But as far as you want the best of the best, you're going to have to really plunk out the money. And it's like, you have to ask yourself, especially if you're starting out, can I afford that blade right now? You know, especially I'm just starting out, learning how to use one, learning, you know, edge alignment, everything else. 1060 blades you can get you know, a little over $100. Sometimes even cheaper, and they're good. And 1060 is an excellent blade to get. But what it really boils down to, and it has throughout the centuries, is what you can afford. Period. That's about it. That's why I prefer to review the underdogs that people really don't talk about, like this company right here, Sawadi. Never had an issue with this thing. Love the wrap on it. The wrap on this is like, for the price point that you pay for this wrap, this is the only company I know that does it. And this ska is one of my most comfortable I've ever owned. So it's like, it's, you know, it's what you can afford, what you're going to use it for. Any sword will last you as long as you don't abuse it. If you use it for what it's intended to, it'll last you a really long time. And if you take care of it, that's it. It doesn't matter if it's an L6 or a 1045 blade or a 1095 blade. It will last you a very long time if you take care of it, if you maintain it. The quality of steel we have nowadays is way much better than what it used to be back then. Okay? But back then, I mean, it was even more expensive for people to get a weapon. And like I said, if, let's say, out of these two swords, okay, this is a higher quality, this is the really less quality. Alright, this, and let's say medieval times, is going to cost you like $500, and that was a lot back then for them. This thing will only cost you, let's say, $50. Well, yeah, this sucker's going to break on you. Okay, it's going to break on you back then, because they didn't get all the impurities out of it, because they didn't care, because you didn't have the money. Whereas this thing, they made sure all the impurities out, and it was strong as hell. Didn't mean those didn't break, they did. But if you had the money to buy this, you had the money to have it repaired. Whereas this, you just threw it away. Because you spent all your money on it. Because you didn't have a lot. So I hope this helps some people in what type of sword you should get. Make your own decision, you know. Yes, go off of what people recommend with brands and everything. But if you can't afford it, which is fine, then go with something that you feel, that you know is reliable, that won't get you killed, and it will last you until you can get that next thing. You know, that's the best advice I can give anybody. You know, like I said, I'll still recommend all my blades. You know, and most of them, most people can get, and most people can afford. You know, even if you had to save up, it wouldn't take you very long to do it. Just like this one from Hanbon, Manyakubi, $166 for it. It's right off the shelf. Never had an issue with this thing, and this thing has cut bamboo. So, I mean, yeah, so that's why I try and keep everything under $300 for everybody, because I know everyone can't afford the $300, $500, $700 swords. It's just no way. Just no way. Especially today. It's just not feasible. So I will see you all later. Have a great weekend, and see you on the next one.